Hello and welcome to Written Words. I'm Helen and today's video is called What is Onomatopoeia? Onomatopoeia is a very complicated sounding word, but it refers to something very simple. Onomatopoeia refers to words that sound similar to the sounds that they describe. So words that can be categorized as onomatopoeia are all describing sounds. For example, crash. The word itself sounds like the noise made when something crashes. And sizzle sounds like the noise made when sausages are sizzling in a pan. If you think back to the old style comics about superheroes, you would get little words in the corner saying biff, pow, splat. All those words are onomatopoeic. Our last few videos have been talking about birds in literature, and much of that literature contains onomatopoeia. Talking about birds lends itself very much to onomatopoeia. Even birds' names are often onomatopoeic. For example, cuckoo sounds like the sound that particular bird makes, or crow, or chiff-chaff, or kittiwake. All those names sound like the sounds the birds make. And there are also lots of onomatopoeic words that reflect the sounds that birds make. For example, tweet, cheep, peep, chirp, chatter, twitter, honk, screech, squawk, gobble, cluck, quack, coo. All those are names of bird sounds, but the words themselves reflect the actual sound. Then there are words like flutter, that evokes the sound of a bird's wings fluttering. Whoosh sounds like something going past at great speed. And what does a hummingbird do? It hums. Another onomatopoeic word that sounds like the sound it's describing. To illustrate onomatopoeia in use, I'm just going to read a short extract from Edgar Allan Poe's very long poem, The Raven. The Raven is narrated by the poet, who is sitting alone in a room and he hears a noise, which he thinks is a knocking at his door. And it actually turns out it's at his window and it's a raven tap, tap, tapping on the window. And he opens the window and lets the raven in, and the raven is a kind of harbinger of doom. So I'm just going to read a couple of verses from that poem, but see if you can hear any onomatopoeia in those two verses. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently tapping, rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, "tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat and nothing more. So did you hear any onomatopoeia in that poem? In the first verse that I read, there was tapping, twice, tapping and tapping, and also rapping and rapping. It's the sound of the raven tapping, as the poet thinks, at his door, actually at his window. And that tapping, tapping and rapping, rapping is repeated in many verses throughout the poem. So it works as a constant reminder of the tapping sound going on in the background as the poet's sitting in his room, until eventually he opens the window. And the second verse I read described what happened when he opens the window. There's many a flirt and flutter. The fl sound and a flutter makes the sound of the wings of the raven as it comes inside. So that's just one example of onomatopoeia in literature. Can you think of any other examples of onomatopoeia connected with birds or anything else in nature? When you're writing, whether it's poetry or prose, onomatopoeia can be a very useful device, in particular if you're writing children's literature. And sometimes poetic license even allows you to make up some of your own. Thank you very much for joining me in this video. My next video will be the last in this series of birds in literature, and it will be our usual writing prompt. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and in the meantime, happy writing.